Welcome back to Talk Tensors. Today we're going to take a deep dive into a paper that really gets at, how we understand information, especially in finance. Like, you listen to an earnings call, and it's like, what's the CEO really saying?
Yeah, and then this paper tries to get at just that, going beyond just like the words and looking at how it's being said.
Exactly, and it all starts with this new data set.
Right, the data set is called SubjectiveQA.
Catchy name.
Yeah, so it comes from this paper. SubjectiveQA, measuring subjectivity in earnings call transcripts QA through six-dimensional feature analysis.
So they're taking these earnings calls, those question and answer sessions, and they're trying to figure out the subjectivity behind them.
Yeah, and they built a data set of over 35,000 question and answer pairs from 120 earnings calls.
Wow, so how do they actually measure that subjectivity?
So they have these six key features that they've annotated each pair with. To really try to capture what's going on beneath the surface.
Okay, so let's break down these six features. First up, we have relevance. Did the CEO even answer the question?
Yeah, sometimes they try to dodge the tough ones.
Right. Next is clarity. How easy is it to understand the answer?
So was it straight to the point, or was it a bunch of jargon?
Like trying to hide something in all those fancy words.
Maybe. Okay, next is optimism. Is the CEO painting a rosy picture or hinting at trouble ahead?
So reading between the lines for the CEO's true feelings about the company's future.
Exactly. Now, specificity. Are they giving us concrete details, or are they keeping it vague?
I see. So are they just giving general statements or actually backing things up?
Right. Then we got cautiousness. Are they hedging their bets or speaking with conviction?
Interesting. So are they saying we're cautiously optimistic, or are they all in?
Exactly. And then lastly, assertiveness. How confident do they sound about the company's future?
So putting it all together, these six features kind of paint a picture of the CEO's personality, their leadership style.
Yeah, are they a straight shooter, or are they trying to spin things? It's fascinating stuff.
It really is. And what I find so interesting is that these are very human qualities, you know? These subjective features are things that we as humans pick up on almost instinctively.
Totally. And for a long time, AI was just focused on the objective stuff, the words themselves. But this paper, it's trying to get AI to understand the stuff beneath the words, the emotions, the intentions.
So they're basically trying to give AI emotional intelligence.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got these six features and this massive data set. How do they actually use this to test if AI can understand these nuances?
Well, they take these question and answer pairs and annotate them. So for each pair, they basically say, okay, how relevant is this? How clear is it? How optimistic? They score each feature.
So they're basically teaching the AI what to look for.
Right, by giving it tons of examples. And what's cool is that the paper gives these examples. You can read these back and forth between the analyst and CEO, and they'll show you, okay, here's how we annotated this, here's why.
So you can really see how those features work in practice.
Yeah, and you can see how, a CEO might sound super specific, but actually be pretty cautious at the same time. Or they might sound optimistic, but not actually be that assertive.
Right, so it's not just about what they're saying, but how they're saying it.
Exactly. It's a whole new level of analysis.
So this is all really cool and groundbreaking stuff, but I think it would be helpful to understand how we even got to this point. What's the history of this type of analysis? Where did it all begin?
Okay, so rewind a few years. Sentiment analysis in finance was pretty basic. It was just counting positive and negative words in company communications, almost like a mood ring for the stock market,
Green means buy and red means sell.
Pretty much. But as machine learning and NLP advanced, we started being able to look at the context of the words.
Okay, so not just the words themselves, but the nuances, the intent behind them.
Exactly, and that's when things started to get really interesting. We could start to see how the tone and language in an earnings call could maybe predict future stock performance.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So, for example, a CEO who sounds hesitant or evasive during an earnings call, that might be a red flag, even if their prepared remarks sound positive.
So it's AI is becoming a lie detector for CEOs.
Right, or at least a BS detector. And that brings us to subjective QA, which takes sentiment analysis to a whole new level with these six subjective features. They're trying to get at those more subtle aspects of communication.
Okay, I'm really interested to hear how these AI models actually perform at detecting these features, and also what it all means for the future of financial analysis.
Yeah, me too.
We'll definitely have to dive into that in part 2.
Sounds good. Welcome back to Talk Tensors.
So last time we were talking about this subjective QA dataset and these 6 features that they're using to analyze,
Yeah.
like how subjective an earnings call is.
Yeah, those features like relevance, clarity, optimism,
Cautiousness, assertiveness.
right? All those.
But the big question is, can AI actually figure this stuff out?
Yeah.
Can it, like, read between the lines the way a human can?
Right. Can AI tell if a CEO is bluffing, basically? Well, to answer that, the researchers took a bunch of different AI models, some trained on financial data, some just general language models,
Okay.
and they tested how well they could identify those 6 features in the subjective QA dataset.
So, like, what were the results? Can AI detect a CEO's poker face?
Well, it's a mixed bag, honestly. Like some features were easier for the AI to pick up on than others.
Okay, which ones were they good at?
They were pretty good at the more straightforward ones, like relevance and clarity.
Makes sense. AI is good at, like, processing information and spotting patterns.
Right, so it can easily tell if an answer is like off topic or if a CEO is using a lot of jargon to sound smart but not actually saying anything.
Hiding behind the big words.
Exactly. But where the AI really struggled was with those more subtle features like cautiousness and assertiveness.
Yeah, those are the ones that really get at, like, the CEO's personality, their true feelings.
Right, and it seems like those are still really hard for AI to grasp. Like they often misinterpreted a CEO's tone or intent.
So even with all the advancements in AI, human intuition is still, like, one step ahead when it comes to reading between the lines.
It seems that way for now. But even though the AI isn't perfect yet, it's still a huge step forward from where we were just a few years ago, you know? Like, we've gone from just counting positive and negative words to actually analyzing the deeper meaning behind the words.
Right, like the framing, the subtle cues that can reveal so much.
Exactly.
So the researchers weren't content with just testing this on earnings calls, right? They wanted to see how well these models generalize to other domains.
Yeah, they got kind of ambitious and applied the same models to a totally different data set. White House press briefings.
Oh, wow. Talk about a high-stakes communication environment. Politicians are masters of, like, carefully crafted language and saying a lot without really saying anything at all.
They really are. And surprisingly, the models, even the ones trained on financial data, did pretty well with the press briefings, especially when it came to clarity.
So the AI could tell if a spokesperson was being straightforward or if they were being vague and evasive.
Exactly. And that makes sense when you think about it. Politicians and CEOs both operate in these like high pressure environments where they're trying to control the message and shape public perception. So the fact that the AI could transfer its learning to a totally different domain suggests that these subjective features aren't just specific to earnings calls. They're probably fundamental to human communication in a lot of different settings.
That's a really interesting point. So it's not just about, like, making money in the stock market. It's about understanding how people communicate in all sorts of situations.
Exactly. And as we rely more and more on algorithms to filter and curate the information we see every day, it becomes even more important to have tools that can help us understand those nuances of communication, to help us see through the spin and make more informed decisions.
Right, because at the end of the day, it's all about being able to cut through the noise and understand what's really being said.
Absolutely. And this research is a big step in that direction.
So we've talked about the research, we've talked about how well those AI models perform, but I think it's important to take a step back and ask, why should the average person care about all of this?
Yeah, good question. It might seem like this research is only relevant to, like, Wall Street analysts or people who follow politics really closely.
But I think it actually has much broader implications.
Yeah, I agree. Like, think about it. We're all bombarded with information every single day. It's coming at us from all directions.
And it can be really hard to know what to believe, who to trust.
Right. And in a world where we're increasingly relying on algorithms to, like, decide what we see and what we don't see, having tools that can help us understand the nuances of communication, that can help us separate fact from fiction.
Yeah, to see through the BS.
Exactly. That's becoming more and more important.
It's not just about being a savvy investor or a politically aware citizen.
It's about being an informed and empowered human being in a world that's increasingly shaped by information, misinformation, and disinformation.
So this research is really about giving people the tools they need to navigate this complex information landscape.
Absolutely. And it's also about understanding the power of language and how it can be used to persuade, manipulate, even deceive.
Which is why it's so important that we develop these AI tools responsibly and ethically.
Yeah, we don't want to end up creating more problems than we solve.
Okay, so on that note, I think it's time to shift gears and talk about some of the potential downsides of this technology, some of the ethical challenges we need to consider as AI plays a bigger and bigger role in shaping how we communicate and understand the world around us.
Yeah, let's dive into that in part 3.
Welcome back to Talk Tensors.
So we've been talking about how AI is getting better at understanding the nuances of human communication, like in those earnings calls.
Yeah, and how it can pick up on those subtle cues that might signal, like whether a CEO is being cautious or assertive.
Right, and how that could help investors make more informed decisions.
But in part 2, we touched on a pretty big what if. What if this technology gets even more sophisticated? Like, what if companies start manipulating their language to, like, game the system?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. What if they start training CEOs to speak in a way that, like, triggers a positive response from the AI, even if what they're saying isn't totally true?
Right. It's like right now we're using AI to analyze human communication, but what if it flips? What if human communication starts being shaped by the need to, like, please the AI?
It's kind of like a sci-fi movie, right? Where the robots become so advanced that humans have to adapt their behavior to appease them.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, it's something we need to think about.
Absolutely. Like, imagine a world where a CEO's success is measured not by their actual leadership skills, but by their ability to, like, trigger the right algorithms with their language.
That's a little scary, to be honest. Would investors even be able to see through that? Or would it just create an even more uneven playing field where the companies with the most resources to, like, hire AI coaches for their CEOs have an even bigger advantage?
And would it ultimately erode trust in the markets? These are all really important questions that we need to be asking ourselves now while this technology is still being developed.
It's like we're standing at this crossroads, right? This technology could bring more transparency to financial markets, but it could also be used to create new forms of deception and manipulation.
Exactly. It all comes down to how we choose to use it.
We need to develop those ethical frameworks and safeguards to make sure it's used responsibly.
Right. We don't want to create more problems than we solve.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential downsides, but I want to end on a more positive note. Let's put on our futurist hats for a minute and explore some of the possibilities, some novel notions inspired by this research.
Yeah, I like that. What if we took this idea of subjective analysis and applied it to other areas beyond just finance?
Ooh, yeah. Okay, let's brainstorm. What about education? Could we use this tech to analyze, like, student essays or presentations, not just for grammar and content, but for things like how well they understand the material, their critical thinking skills, their creativity?
That's really interesting. It could help teachers understand how students are learning and tailor their teaching to each student's needs.
Right. It could be way more insightful than just, like, standardized test scores.
Absolutely. And it could even help students become more self-aware of their own communication styles.
Okay, my turn. What about healthcare? Imagine if we could analyze doctor-patient interactions, looking for things like empathy, active listening, clear communication.
Yeah. We could identify areas where doctors could improve their communication skills to better connect with their patients.
Right, it could lead to a more human-centered healthcare system.
It could really revolutionize patient care.
And what about diplomacy or conflict resolution? Imagine being able to analyze the language used in negotiations to identify common ground and build trust.
It's incredible to think about all the potential applications once we move beyond the world of finance.
Like, we could really start to address some of the biggest challenges facing humanity.
Exactly. It's clear that this research is just the beginning. We're only just scratching the surface of what AI can do when it comes to understanding human communication.
And as with any powerful technology, it comes with both risks and rewards. It's up to us to make sure we use it wisely, ethically, and for the greater good.
I completely agree.
So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of Talk Tensors. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the technical details of this new dataset to the broader implications for society and the future of communication. And as always, we want to leave you with something to think about. As AI gets better at understanding us, how will that change the way we communicate with each other? And what does that mean for the future of human connection in a world that's increasingly mediated by technology? Thanks for joining us.